Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tenderio's first e-conference, an hour-long session in which we'll be introducing the Tenderio platform to you and talking about some of the opportunities that exist for SMEs and business across Europe for accessing the enormous amount of business that there is involved in public procurement and bidding for that business abroad. We'll be looking at things from the EC perspective. We'll be looking at the Tenderio platform itself. We'll be looking at some ideas about how it is best to bid for this business and some tips and guidance on how to do that. And we'll be looking at some case studies of successful bidding abroad. Now, my name is William Davis, and I'm the MD of Insight Publishers, a UK consultancy, communications consultancy based in Bristol. And we're a partner of Tenderio. So, just to quickly run through how we'll be looking at the e-conference, we'll be starting with my introduction, of course, but then we'll be moving on to get a view from the European Commission and the latest plans on how the Commission is supporting SMEs and providing them with the best access to public procurement. We'll then be looking at Tenderio and how that works. We'll be giving you some practical guidance on tendering abroad, key tactics on winning tenders, and then also looking at some case studies. We will have a question and answer session. This is a very important time where all our registrants are able to ask questions, and we'll be able to answer them live for you with our panel of experts. So do keep those questions coming. You'll see on your screen a button where you press so you can ask the questions. We'll get those questions and then we'll ask them to the experts at the end, and then we'll round up with some closing remarks. Okay, so a little bit about Tenderio and why we started it. So an extraordinary figure here is that 2,500 billion euros is spent every single year on products and services by European public bodies. It's an enormous amount of money. It makes up a massive 16% of Europe's GDP, based on figures that were around when we started Tenderio 2 years ago. 15 to 20% of global GDP is accounted for by public procurement. The problem is that a lot of this is missed by small businesses. 25% of contracts, for example, are awarded when there is only one bidder. One bidder applies for that tender. Most public tenders are only ever receiving 2 to 4 offers. So an opportunity to bid is being missed by a huge amount of SMEs. And the opportunity for the public body is to receive competitive bids is being reduced. 10,000 tenders every year are cancelled because literally are no offers received. So they have to re-tender and look for new applicants. And only 1.26 of all SMEs ever participate in international tenders. So very, very small amount of SMEs are accessing this opportunity. This opportunity is huge, and this is why we're here today, to provide you with guidance on how you can access this opportunity. Why do so many SMEs miss out? Well, I think we've decided when we started Tenderio 2 years ago, we looked at this very carefully and discovered that SMEs generally don't have a huge amount of knowledge about what is actually available out there. They don't have access to the tenders themselves, and they don't really understand how to access those. The understanding of the bidding process is often complicated. It's a complex process, and to understand it takes a lot of time and effort. Businesses are generally very busy and sticking to traditional markets themselves. There's a confusion over the local and regional rules and regulations for tendering. They are complex, but they are penetrable. You can understand them, but there is this feeling that they are a bit complicated. the language barrier is often something that puts people off, not only in terms of the understanding the actual tender, the opportunities that exist, but also having to deal with companies and organisations in a different language abroad is often off-putting. And then there's the overall feeling that we sense that look, I don't have a chance of winning a business abroad. I'm far too busy in my own country, and it'll go to a local firm anyway. So what's the point? These are all very valid and understandable reasons why SMEs aren't accessing this business. And this is why we set up Tenderio 2 years ago. Tenderio, very briefly, because you're going to hear more about it, is a network of consultancies, all of which are experienced in winning business abroad. These consultancies made of 14. There are also 14 companies involved in 30 European countries and speaking 16 languages. Tenderio provides very country-specific guidelines on winning tenders, and these guidelines are available for you to access free through the website to learn how tendering works in your country and how tendering works in your country in relation to other countries. We provide training sessions on how you can win business abroad through our bidding lab, and we provide a benchmarking service, so specific to your business, so you can know what others are bidding to win, how they're bidding, and what they're doing, so you can benchmark your business against those. And we also match you up with partners abroad in the country where you're bidding to strengthen your bid. And this, we also provide you with mentoring to help as well. All this is available through the Tenderio website, and you'll hear more. Tenderio is also a tender search engine, and there are thousands of new tenders every day made available using the leading public tender search engine designed for SMEs. Excuse me. So what you do is you select a tender in which you're interested. You get all the details sent to you. You identify the possible partners. We can recommend consultancies with whom you can work, who can help you. We help write the bids and translate materials into your language, all helping you bid successfully. Okay. Before we go on now to our introduction to Tenderio from its founder, Robert Miscuff, I'm going to play you a short video.
This is Tom. Tom owns a painting company and wants to enter new international markets. But there is a problem. Tom speaks only English and doesn't know where to search for new business opportunities. He doesn't know anyone abroad and has no clue who his competitors are, nor under which conditions they are selling. Meet Mary, who doesn't suffer any of these issues, as she is a large furniture manufacturer with a dedicated team constantly looking for new customers abroad. But lately, her sales figures have gone the wrong way. Mary finds that attracting new customers is too expensive, and it has become ever more challenging to identify new deals. Luckily, they both came through Tenderio, the one-stop place for public tenders. On Tenderio, they simply entered a keyword describing their product and immediately found out which institutions wanted to buy it in various countries. Right after, Tenderio also introduced them to local partners who helped them to crack linguistic and legal challenges and assisted them to prepare their bid. On Tenderio, they found out who their potential competitors are and what was the size of similar contracts in the past, helping them to fine-tune their financial offer. Thanks to Tenderio, Tom and Mary are now automatically alerted whenever there's a new relevant business opportunity published anywhere in the world. Tenderio. Identify your tender, team up with partners, and bid.
Okay, I hope that gives you some idea now about a bit more about Tenderio and how it works. We're now very honoured to have Raluca Ipate from the European Commission, the policy officer at DG Grow. And she's going to now talk to us about how the EC is supporting SMEs, really, in the whole sector of public procurement. So I'll hand over now to Raluca.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. So indeed, for us, SMEs, increasing SMEs participation in public procurement is very important. This is why we have a series of action, among which, for example, the co-funding of Tenderio platform to help SMEs to participate further. Why we are doing this? Sam already mentioned, and I think Robert will do as well, public procurement offers big opportunities for SMEs because it represents quite a substantial part of each country's GDP. And we think that public procurement can be a driver for economic growth and modernization. And where SMEs come in, we think that the participation of SMEs in public procurement is a win-win situation, because it can increase competition and can offer better and maybe better priced products for the public buyers. And in this process, when SMEs are winning tenders, they are also able to grow and develop further. So we are trying to put quite some measures in place. And you could see that actually this would fit in three categories. So first of all, legislation. I don't know if you're aware, but the legislation that regulates public procurement in each member state, it actually has at the basis the European directives. And these directives have been changed in 2014, and the member states were supposed to, they had to transpose them until 2016. And with this legislation change, we have introduced measures that are more favorable to SMEs. So what kind of measures, what we are talking about here? We are pushing for proportional selection criteria so that the contracting authorities, for example, are not asking much more than what is strictly necessary for a contract to be well carried out. For example, and we have a clear cap on the turnover that the buyers can request companies to have in order to be able to participate, and this cap is to twice the value of the contract. We have also other measures include the division of contracts into lots. So what we are saying is that this should be rather the rule if, for very good reasons, the contracting authorities cannot divide big contracts in smaller lots, then they have to explain. And this would help make contracts, public contracts, more accessible to SMEs because of they might be able to better supply certain goods and services of a certain type than to bundle everything in one big contract. Another element, because it was already mentioned at the beginning that public procurement is perceived as burdensome and that this can deter certain SMEs from participating in public procurement. We are trying to reduce the administrative burden. Actually, we are doing more. Again, with the directives, we have introduced the self-declaration. So the companies can participate in procurement with a self-declaration that they are fulfilling the exclusion criteria and depending also on sometimes selection. And then they are providing, only the winner needs to provide the documentation to support this claim. Also, we are moving more and more, and you could see that in the different countries, to e-procurement, because also this could reduce administrative burden, can help SMEs submit offers. So all these measures now should be in the legislation of the member states. Another area where we are working on is guidelines. And you'll see on the next slide that actually when we are discussing about SMEs, we are targeting different groups. And actually we're trying to reach all those involved. So to reach the public buyers, to reach the SMEs, and also in this process to build the knowledge of what is needed, what works, what does not work, and what we need to improve. So coming back to my previous element, we have developed guidelines for public authorities and buyers, how to develop tenders that are procuring, allow for innovation, how to carry out green procurement, how to look into the social procurement, because although not directly linked to SMEs, in our view, the SMEs benefit of this because many SMEs that are innovative, many SMEs they are they are involved in green products and services, and they are innovative. So working with that can help SMEs participation in public procurement. And the last element, we are trying to actually have projects that would help SMEs participate in public procurement in practice, in reality. So not only working with at member state level. So here, for example, comes the project which you will find out more today, but also others. So we have used a union program to co-fund business intermediaries that could help SMEs participate in public procurement, and not only in the in the country, but also in other member states, and why not even outside the EU. And if you're interested, I mean, I can name the other projects like PPAX, SESAM, EPON that are offering other type of services in the same area. Other projects are coming or are in the preparation. We are trying to also work on procurement of innovation, trying to bridge the public buyers and the very innovative SMEs on certain projects, in certain areas, so that we can see what works and then try to replicate further, and also create tools that afterwards can be disseminated or can be used by other business intermediaries, SMEs, and so on in their participation in public procurement. So our action plan has 3 pillars: SMEs, buyers, public procurers, and we building our knowledge, trying to understand, knowing what the situation is, because it's not very clear what the situation is in terms of public procurement, SMEs participation in public procurement. And this is even more complicated when we discuss in our jargon. We use above threshold procurement and below threshold procurement. This might not be familiar to you, but it's actually there are certain values, let's say roughly 150,000 for goods and services purchased by central authorities, for which the public procurement rules of the directive that needs to be transposed apply, and lower value contracts that can the member states' national legislation apply. And I think this is quite important in order to be able to develop better measures in the future. In our measures that we are taking, other communications that we are taking on public procurement, because obviously there is going to be no legislative change for the moment, but this doesn't mean that we are not working further. One key element that we are focusing is partnership. Involvement of all those elements and all those players that I've mentioned before. Why? Because, I mean, public procurement and taxpayers and the well-being are very closely linked. And we not only have to think of what's happening today, but we also have to think of taxpayers of tomorrow, and to help developing a better and more stable economy. And SMEs, which in the EU are 99% of the businesses, the total businesses, are a clear component. I hope you will receive our offer of partnership, and together we can advance this work further. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Raluca. And it's really encouraging to hear the enormous amount of effort and work going into making public procurement more accessible to SMEs and how that will benefit society as a whole. So thank you for that. We're now going to switch over to a live video link to Slovakia to hear from Robert Miskov, who is the founder of Tenderio, and he's going to explain basically how Tenderio works and how using Tenderio can help you get involved in bidding for business abroad. So over to you, Robert, now, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Miskov. I'm co-founder and project coordinator of Tenderio. I'm going to talk to you about how Tenderio actually works and how can you benefit from the services that are there available for you out there. When we were designing Tenderio, we were actually trying to start from the barriers or obstacles or problems that SMEs are facing when they're trying to find and submit the tender abroad. So we boiled it down to really micro steps and identified the individual hurdles that these SMEs are facing, and then try to, through different techniques or tools, overcome each one of these barriers. So the first essential step when you need to start looking for business opportunities abroad or tenders abroad, you need to identify them. That's step number one, and this is sometimes still a cumbersome process. We will have a dedicated session on how you can actually find tenders abroad. Once you identify them, it happens that normally you need some time to prepare tenders, and perhaps the interesting call for tenders that you identified has a deadline tomorrow or in 3 days, which is certainly not enough time to prepare a sufficient offer. So hurdle number 2 is actually find the tender on time. The third one, when you're going to cross-border opportunities, you need to obviously understand the language. So even if you detect the tender, detect it on time, you still need to understand it from the linguistic point of view. These first 3 barriers were packaged in Tenderio platform as quantitative barriers that could be somehow addressed by a piece of software. And on Tenderio, we actually use the technology, a search engine for public tenders, which to a large degree address these 3 sets of problems. The Tenderio search engine works pretty much like a Google tool, where you can search for tenders based on the keyword or the sector or the country. Or if you are a paid subscriber, also you can combine these 3 filters together. Apart from that, you will also start receiving translated alerts that will come to your inbox by email as soon as they are detected by the software. And as I mentioned, the executive summaries of these tenders are translated into English by humans, which is a good addition because you don't need to follow or know other languages in order to know what's going on, what are the other markets offering at the moment in English. Okay, let's presume that you solved 3 problems. What comes next? You need to understand if the tender is eligible. If you're eligible for the tender, then you need to understand if you meet the conditions. And sometimes it happens, in many cases it happens, that you can actually deliver, let's say, 90% of the job, but the remaining 10% you don't have the necessary turnover, or you don't have the reference that they're asking for, or you simply do not have capacity to deliver what is asked. In that case, you may either forget about the tender and look for a more relevant opportunity, or you may also contact a partner and set up a consortium. Once you have the consortium or you are eligible, you can do it yourself. Then there is a bid writing part, which is also in a way science on its own, because if you are really the first comer or a newcomer in the field, you need to have certain set of writing skills in order to write competitive offer. So these eligibility, partner search, and bid writing problems or challenges are more of qualitative nature. And how do we address this in Tenderio? Well, we have set up the network of international network of consultancy firms, which are currently based almost in all countries of Europe, and that we activate in case of relevant lead. What this means in practice for you is that, let's say you're an SME based in Italy, you identified right or interesting opportunity in Germany, but you would need a partner from Germany, or write it in German, or really need a local help. So what happens in that case? We approach or activate our consultancies that we contracted on the field in Germany. They send us their offer, and in case you are interested, we match you, and you can start preparing a tender with them. Apart from search engine, translated alerts, and network of consultancies, we also offer a so-called benchmarking tool, which is really a useful service. It's a database. It's a structured database that we put together based on 500,000 tenders for the period covering past 5 years. And based on this database, we are able to extract useful information. And this information, includes data on what companies are successful in a given segment, in your sector, let's say. Where are they from? We can answer question if how many tenders are actually submitted in this in my segment, or is there a lot of competitions in my segment? What are the usual assessment criteria? Is it the lowest price? Is it quality price ratio? And what is the really ratio between these criteria? We also track information on who is bidding for tenders in my contract size target. So we can really personalize this information, and based on this, you are positioned to take informed decision on whether or not it makes sense for you to apply for a given tender. Well, I invite you to contact us and just check it out, try it really. Tell us what is your company, where are you from, what is your sector, and we can let you know who are the winners and what is the situation like in your sector based on this database. Lastly, during the duration of the project, we also produced so-called 10 country-specific guidelines, which address the national legislation when it comes to tendering in 10 specific countries. I invite you to, they're free of charge, downloadable on our website. We just ask you to give us your email address, and you're free to download these country-specific guidelines from 10 countries in English language. Thank you very much. These are, I think, in a nutshell, the summary of services that we currently offer in Tenderio, and we hope that you may find them useful.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I think that gave us all a really clear introduction to Tenderio and what it can do for us. We're now going to move on to Age Lane from Civita in Estonia, and now she's going to tell us a bit about what the different types of tender are available, and some guidance on how to find the right one for you abroad. Okay, so over to you, Age. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, greetings from the Estonia office in Tartu. Today I will share with you some tips, tricks and strategies on how to start doing business abroad. So different types of tenders and how to find the right one for you. Before going into details, with tender strategies, it's important to understand what is the difference between a tender and a grant. So in terms of tenders, the buyer will give you a quite detailed service or product description in the terms of reference that you need to comply with. And as the idea for the service or product comes from the buyer, the IPR will also stay with that organization. And you are expected to earn profits. So the service or product is changed for commercial terms. In terms of grants, that, for example, could be funded by structural funds or European programs, are aimed at solving some overall problems in a European, national or regional level. And therefore, the definition of a problem is provided in a more generic way. And the sellers are expected to provide the detailed solutions in their proposals or project ideas. And accordingly, the IPR will normally stay with the seller, but the seller is not allowed to earn profits, and normally there is a co-financing requirement related to the grants. So when deciding on how to expand your business, you need to analyze and understand if it's the tender or the grant process that is more suitable, or a combination of them, depending on your service and product offerings. And now, when going forward with tenders, it is important to understand who and why organize tenders. Normally, it can be any public institution who purchases goods, services, or works for their daily operations. So, to purchase expertise external to the organization, or goods that can be delivered by third parties. And the organizations implementing tenders can be in different levels of public interest, so international institutions like European bodies, national governments like ministries or their agencies, local municipalities and cities, or publicly funded foundations. Additionally, there are international organizations and donors providing development aid to support the less developed countries and regions. That can be done bilaterally from one country to another, like, for example, German GIZ, or multilaterally through international organizations. So, for example, EBRD, World Bank, United Nations are the kind of international organizations supporting the development of less advanced regions. Additionally, in terms of private sector companies, they must use public procurement only in case the activity to be procured is financed with public money. So, for example, with grants. But there is a tendency also for private sector companies to organize more and more public tenders just to facilitate competitive offering and get better quality out of the services and the products. So the variety of organizations and the services to purchase are widening, and there is a lot of opportunities there for SMEs to get to the international level with their service or product offering. When starting to design your strategy, you need to understand that the tendering process may take quite some long time. So we have identified some prerequisites that are important to analyze before going to search for tenders. So first of all, as the tender descriptions are quite detailed, you need to understand exactly what is your product or service that you offer in order to be able to define the tenders of your interest. And secondly, independent on the tender, there are normally 3 types of criteria that you need to follow. These are exclusion, selection, and award criteria. For exclusion, the expectation is that the organization to participate in the tender is not in the conditions of debts, tax errors, bankruptcy, fraud, or any similar conditions. So you need to provide a declaration of honor stating that. Secondly, the selection criteria reflects the economic and financial capacity and technical and professional capacity of your team. So what you can do in advance is to prepare your balance sheets, loss and profit statements, and check your turnover. Because if your profit loss account is negative, then you are not normally eligible to participate. And when thinking of the size of the tenders and bidding in general, there is a rule of thumb that for single bids, the past 3 years turnover should be at least 150% of the maximum size of the tender. So this is something that you can count on. And if this is not achieved, you can consider matching up with some partners and prepare a joint bid in order to comply with this criteria. And when partners are needed, you need to think about what is your added value to be provided to this partner who maybe has a larger turnover. So this could rely on your technical and professional capacity. So make sure that you have a team prepared, that you know their references, you have their CVs available. So in general, you have a team that can actually deliver these products and services in order to avoid unuseful efforts in preparing the documents. And thirdly, the award criteria goes further into the bid preparation process. So here you need to take into account that preparing a bid can be quite time consuming, that you need to prepare a technical proposal where you describe your understanding, methodology, your detailed products and services to be provided. And as we are talking about tenders abroad, there might be also language issues involved. So here you might consider involving a local tender consultant to support you in this process. And within Tenderio project, we have a network of 40 consultancies across the EU available for this kind of services. So you may check our website to find out further information on how we can support you in this. And secondly, in terms of award criteria, it's always a combination of quality and price. So you need to consider what is your added value. Is it in the quality or it's in relative competitiveness of your pricing system? And here we have prepared a Tenderio benchmarking service that is a database of successful tenders and results of the European Commission institutions that you can use for benchmarking your organization against others. You can see what kind of services and products the EU institutions have purchased, what are the common terms, and who are the successful tenderers that you probably will be competing with. Again, check our website and contact us to get access to the benchmarking service that we have. So now I want to go into very practical level on how to find the right tenders and their sources. Across EU, there is a common regulation that also provides the scene for tender publication practices. So smaller tenders that are below national thresholds are normally published in institutional, organizational homepages or by sending personal invitations to potential providers. So here there is a bit more work in order to identify these tenders and to lobby in order to get these invitations. Larger budget tenders that are above national thresholds are published in national procurement register. So each country has their own register where these tenders are published. And international tenders above EU thresholds are published in a common European official journal that is called Tenders Electronic Daily that you may consult. So when building your strategy on expanding your business through tenders, you might consider two approaches. First of all, there is a way of setting up your list of relevant web pages and regularly monitor them. And this is what we in Civita have done, and also the other partners in our Tenderio project have done. And by doing this, we realized that it's quite time consuming and there is a need for according search engines to do this job for you. So in Tenderio project, we have a Tenderio search engine available that combines dozens of national and international sources where tenders are published, and where you can implement a search by keyword, country, or sector in order to identify the tenders that are of your interest. And alternatively, there are a number of such services available. So this is how you can build up your own strategy for accessing the tenders. And that is a brief overview of how to start. And I would like to wish you success in entering international business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aga. That's a very interesting insight there, initial insight into the world of tendering and the different types of tenders available, and some very practical guidance. Of course, if anyone still wants more information or clarification on any of these issues, you can ask a question with this webinar and we can answer them. Or you can go onto the Tenderio website and access the help desk where you can find information, where you can ask any question and we'll help you with those. And you can also use the benchmarking service as well. So lots of ways you can get clarification on anything. So here we are back to Robert now over in Slovakia again. Now we're going to look at some tactics this time. So some tactics on how to win tenders. And Robert's got some very interesting ideas about what works and what doesn't, and some success stories to tell us about. So over to you, Robert.
Hello, everyone. In this intervention, I'm going to share with you some validated techniques, concretely 5 validated techniques, when SMEs were able to win a tender abroad. The first technique, and we experienced it ourselves directly in Pedal Consulting, is as follows. Under a so-called negotiated procedure, there was expression of interest launched by the European Commission agency based in one of the member states, asking to provide expression of interest to a certain tender. We at Pedal Consulting detected this opportunity and decided to express our interest, which means really answering a very short questionnaire and sending it back to the agency by email. After 2-week time, we received from the agency the official invitation to participate to the tender, and they send us the tender specifications. After going through the tender specifications, we reached the conclusion that actually our company was not the right one to actually deliver the job, because we didn't have the necessary track record nor capabilities of delivering the service asked. But tender specifications also mention that this concrete opportunity could be subcontracted up to 90%. And another condition said that only parties that were directly invited to participate in this tender eligible to apply, which, when I translate it, what it means in practice is that Petal Consulting was eligible to apply, and we were also able to find the right supplier, subcontractor, that could do the 90% of the job required. So this is exactly what we did. Based on the tender specifications, we did our market analysis, approached what we believe to be the best supplier on the market, explained them rules of the game, and they accepted to become our subcontractor under certain conditions, and we submitted the tender together. And after several months, we received a positive assessment from the agency saying that our contract actually was selected. This is the real-life example that we experienced last year, but more interesting than actually the financial contract was the fact that we discovered that even though the company, your company, is not directly, 100% fit for the certain tender, when it comes to under threshold tenders published through negotiated procedure in the form of expression of interest, you still have a possibility to win the tender in case you subcontract the right supplier and still follow the rules of the game that are specified in tender specifications. So, using the expressions of interest and then finding subcontractors. This is the first validated technique. The second one is actually going back to the benchmarking service that we covered in earlier intervention. And here, as I mentioned, we are able to tell you which company wins what type of tenders and in which sectors, and also how many offers they normally receive per call for tenders. So here, what happened is that our client in IT sector actually identified tender. They were well-established company, but they never actually had the reference of doing services for public institution outside of their national frontiers. So we told them which company won similar tender before them, and actually we gave them the list of 3 companies and told them to get introduced to these companies and try to see if they would be willing to team up and submit the tender together. And following long negotiations, but I think very effective negotiations in this case, they actually were able to set up a consortium with one of the 3 names that we gave them, submitted the proposal together, and we still don't know if it was evaluated positively or not, because we're waiting for the result, but there is pretty good chances for them, simply because they are already in the consortium with the trusted partner that delivered similar services for the client in question before. The third tactique or strategy, if you want, is more for SMEs that are willing to, or that are already offering services or products for very competitive prices. And here we're having in mind actually the price versus quality criterion. In 2018, European Commission or UN tenders or also national tenders, they still publish many tenders where the key weight or the heaviest indicator of assessment goes for the price and not for the quality. So again, the real life example, SME based in Central Europe identified tender where the price versus quality ratio was 40 to 60%. So 40% of the total value of the contract was actually about the price of the tender. Again, long story short, this company, even though they were not able to submit or score very high on the quality criteria, because of the relatively very competitive price that they offered, they managed to climb over the back of other competitors in the tender, and because of the formula, which is part of the tender specifications, they scored the first, they were positioned first, and secured this tender. So the takeaway from this story is that if you are an SME, able to sell under very competitive prices, focus on those tenders where the price element has a big weight. I need to also add here that the European Commission, of course, nowadays is introducing other measures where they really focus on quality, which is, I think, my personal opinion, is the right direction. But still, this will take some time, and we recommend SMEs that have competitive prices to focus on these type of tenders. The fourth tactic is so-called consortium-based approach. What this means in practice is that an SME or group of SMEs located in, say, 3, 4, 5 countries are already, ideally, that have already collaboration between them, already have the at least administrative part of the proposal ready, and are only monitoring the calls for tenders which are published by institutions that are relevant for them. And in case they detect the tender which is interesting or relevant for them, they already have the consortium ready. They don't need to find the time. They know exactly who is capable of doing what. And perhaps just based on the tender specifications of this new tender that they identified, they can approach one more or maybe 2 more partners in order to really fill in all the gaps. So, and this happens quite often. There are so-called consultancies that or companies, IT companies that already have established collaboration, where there is already high level of trust established, and the core consortium already exists even before the tender is published or detected. So if you can, maybe try to organize already teams with your existing partners, ideally abroad. Set up first consortium, core of consortium, and then whenever you detect relevant opportunity, take 1 or 2 more partners if needed, and go for the tender. You save a lot of time, and you will be able to prepare a very competitive offer. The last validated tactique that I would like to talk to you, but it is in a way transversal, and you can combine it with the tactics I mentioned before, is to team up with either large companies, because they have references, they are credible, and also the procurers are more willing to offer contracts to large companies because of risk management, or you can also team up with local companies which are based in the country where the tender is published. Again, statistics say that tenders where they are published, in over 90% of cases, have at least one partner which already reside in that particular country. So again, just to conclude, the 5 validated tactics that works for SMEs and that are worth trying is submitting expression of interest and then subcontracting the best potential supplier. Second one is using benchmarking service in order to identify previous winner and try to convince them to prepare application together. The third one is price ratio discourse, where if you are offering already on the market very competitive prices, zoom into those tenders that have a large price criterion. The fourth one is consortium-based approach. Be ready even before the consortium, even before the tender is published. And the fifth one, team up with large companies if possible, and or with local companies where the tender is published. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. That's great. We're gonna running out of time, such as way with these live events. So I want to ask Alex now to present the first of our case study, which is about tendering for goods. So Alex, over to you without further ado.
Okay, thank you. So in fact, I at this moment I will not be partner from Tenderio or from Loba. I will be in a role play representing furniture. This is a fictitious company from Portugal that works in furniture supplier. We heard about Tenderio, and so we were curious to know what can Tenderio help us in finding business abroad. So we went to Tenderio, and the first thing that we did was to use the search for tenders. So, of course, the keyword was furniture, and when clicking on furniture, we got a set of what Tenderio calls fresh and live tenders. So fresh are the new ones, and live are tenders that are still within the deadline for applying. I found a suitable tender in Czech Republic. So I want to know more about this tender, and I want to know how to start bidding. When I click it, I have this I need to pay to get more information, but these are not bad news, because Tenderio can show me can send me the information if I had a login, like we are seeing it here. So what I did is I contacted Tenderio and asked me to send me the contract notice in English. So in this summary in English, I already know who wants to buy, what they want to buy, and when. Also, of course, the key structure is in English, but then the contents are, in this case, for Czech Republic, they are in the country language. But so I saw from the summary that I'm interested on this opportunity. Again, I contacted Tenderio, and what can be done? It are two different things. So Tenderio can help me and find me a suitable partner for translation and consultancy services. In this case, of course, there will be a business transaction, or Tenderio can also present me to a partner that can participate with me, to a local partner that can participate with me, and we can do a joint participation. And from here, I already have the information that I need and the partners that I need to apply for this opportunity. But I can get even more information if I want, and as already mentioned by Robert before, Tenderio developed a set of country guidelines, and one for Czech Republic, so I can go to these guidelines and understand the legal framework, the indicators and statistics in Czech Republic, how the structure and contents of a tender in Czech Republic are, the procedures, what I need to use, what tools, how is the bidding process, and I also have a useful list of common mistakes that we should avoid. So with this, with the help of Tenderio to identify the tender and to find local partners, with the help of the guidelines, even if I have more doubts, I can contact Tenderio using the help desk system. So, for me, representing a company in furniture, this is more than a search engine for getting the information about public procurement. For me, what is more important is what Tenderio can offer me in terms of support, in terms of identifying local partners, in terms of translating the materials, and even help me with some advices that are in the baseline of Tenderio. So this was my experience as a user of Tenderio.
Thank
Hello.
you. Eleni, hi. So
Hey.
over to you now for our second case study. And now, just quickly before we have reached the hour mark on this e-conference, but I hope everyone can stay for a little while longer while we go through these next interesting stages of what we need to tell you about. So over to you, Eleni.
Thank you, Alex and William, and also thank you all for participating. Within this context, today we will take the example of an open call announced by the Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises regarding new technologies and digitization. When a contracting authority publishes a contract notice, an interested candidate may prepare and submit an offer. As Alex presented earlier, the first step is to search carefully and select the right tender, the one that suits our services the best. Each call of tenders contains few documents that includes all the necessary information you need to know. So, when selecting a tender that it seems interesting to you, you should search for this package of documents either through a link in the website that the call has been published or by asking the contracting authority by email. In our example, the call contains the following documents. A version of the contract to be signed in case you win the tender, so as to have an idea of the contract you will sign. A form where the tenderer must fill in with info relevant to its business turnover. A table including all the necessary technical capacity that the bidder must have and should fill in its experience. In case of consortium, the letter of submission of tender includes information of its partner. The declaration of honor document refers to the case. Instead of submitting an amount of documents to prove that you do not fall under the exclusion criteria, you submit this declaration of honor signed, and if you win the tender, you are supposed to submit all the relevant documents afterwards. The collaboration agreement is signed by all partners, defining also who is the lead contractor. In case of subcontractors or advisory board, this is a template for the letter of intent that we have to enclose, and the templates for the technical and financial offer, a checklist with all the documents required in order to assist the evaluators. Keep in mind to include this kind of document even when it is not included in the call, because it will be very helpful for the evaluators. The invitation to tender includes some very important information such as the deadline, the period of validity of your offer, and the way the offer has to be submitted. Finally, the tender specifications document includes all the essential info you need to know for preparing your bid, such as the subject of the contract, the background, the objectives, all the criteria. And in addition, in the contract notice, you will find in detail the general and the specific terms of carrying out the contract, which are very important to be known in advance, so as to assess if you can respond to them in case you win the tender. Let's now have a closer look in the tender specifications. As you may see, this document includes all the necessary information you need in order to start preparing your bid. In general, the key points you should check very carefully are the topic and the subject of the contract to make sure that you have the experience needed, the budget, the deadline to see if it is feasible for you, and of course the exclusion and award criteria in order to make sure that you are an eligible candidate. In the current example, the first chapter describes in detail the background information, the context, and the general and specific objectives that we should read very carefully and verify that we are eligible to meet them through our proposal. Moreover, in our proposal and methodology, we must describe in a clear way how we will meet all these objectives. Next, we should go and check the exclusion criteria together with the declaration of honor document that is attached in the tender folder, and check very carefully that we do not fall under any of those. Bidders can be excluded at any stage during the procedure when it turns out that fall under the exclusion criteria. Here we may see the form. When we make sure that we do not fall under any of the exclusion criteria, we may check the selection criteria and the profile that any potential candidate may have. If we are not able to respond to most of them, then we may search for potential partners with the skills and expertise required by the tender. At this point, it is also very important to be aware of the award criteria so as to base our offer in order to meet them in the best possible way. Furthermore, at these initial stages, we must check some more information prior to start preparing our offer, and this information are included in the invitation to tender document, as presented earlier, is attached in the call document. In this document, we will find the submission deadline, and the submission deadline we have to make sure that we are eligible to be consistent with it, meaning to collect all the necessary documents on time and have an integrated version of our offer well in advance. In addition, pay attention in the information regarding the means of submission and be prepared accordingly. In case of online submission, check also if you need to subscribe to the relevant platform, and preferably do not leave it for the last minute. Last but not least, check all your documents to be signed by the person defined in the call. Those steps described must be followed prior to your bid preparation and will help you in order to manage and define the actions you will undertake towards a successful submission. In general, the bid to be submitted should include the technical offer, enfolding all the documents that are specified in the contract notice and proving the bidder's technical adequacy. The bidder should prepare his technical offer, ensuring that his bid focuses on the requirements set out in the specifications and that his experience is well documented. Moreover, the financial offer, where the bidder involves the value of his offer in euro, calculated and presented as it is specified in the contract notice and depending on the type of contract and selection criteria. Apart from the technical and financial offer, it is required to submit some supporting documents as they are specified in the call. To conclude, some general key points to bear in mind when you are about to submit an offer are to make sure that you are an eligible candidate and check carefully the requirements and the bidder's profile, all the technical and other specifications of the public contract, and ensure that your bid focuses on the requirements set out in the specification, which are the qualifications and specifications that the bidder must have. Read carefully the terms and conditions, and in particular the exclusion, selection, and award criteria. Mark the time limits for submission of the offer and examine all the application forms thoroughly and make sure you collect all the required supporting documents on time. And of course, ensure that you attach all the necessary compulsory documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleni. Thank you very much. Okay. Right, we've gone over time, I'm afraid. So what we've decided quickly is, I think we've had lots of questions in, which are far too numerous to be able to answer it in any reasonable time. So what we've decided is that the team will get together and answer these questions for you. We've had several interesting ones, one even on Brexit, which is exciting. So we'll answer that as well, hopefully. And we'll get those off to you in a pack to everyone who's registered, and they'll be available online as well, all the answers to questions that people have asked. So what I want to do now, excuse me, what I want to do now is just hand back to Robert, the founder of Tenderio, who's over in Slovakia, to just wrap up again finally for this e-conference. And if Robert, if you could do that now, I'd be grateful. Thank you very much.
Just some final concluding remarks. It's been quite a journey since establishment of Tenderio back in 2015. Since the birth of Tenderio, we are glad to state that we helped dozens of SMEs secure contracts outside of their country. And currently we register above 300 registered users, all SMEs, most of them coming from Europe. And we hope that the club will grow and we will be able to support more and more SMEs and helping them to acquire new markets and contracts abroad. The Tenderio project is reaching its end. We are really grateful for the grant we received from the COSME program. But as mentioned, we were there before and we are not going anywhere. In contrary, Tenderio will be there even after the end of the Tenderio project. And we have a lot of interesting innovations ready for you. We are not going to disclose the details yet, but please keep on following us, or if you are not following us yet, subscribe to our platform or follow us on our social media channels. We are constantly trying to innovate and update our services so as to meet your needs as much as possible. Please keep on subscribing also to Tenderio free package, because we will certainly keep on offering the services that we developed in the framework of the project until the further notice. We still do not know internally yet when the free Tenderio package will actually be integrated under the Tenderio Plus package. But at least for the period of next 6 months, we are committed to maintain all the services that are available under free Tenderio package. I would like to maybe say at the end that in case you haven't tried to participate in public tender abroad and you think that it's something interesting or something that you would like to try, please visit our website first, contact our consultants, and take advantage of the services that we are offering you, so that you can really prepare the proposal which meets the relevant criteria and that has high chances of succeeding. Please also be patient. Tendering process is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a long run. But if you are consistent and if you are continuously improving based on the feedback you receive and also building up internal capacity of identifying, preparing, and winning tenders abroad, you will essentially be able to introduce new revenue stream to your company, and being contracted by public institutions can really become part of your long-term strategy. So I would like to thank you very much for your trust that you showed us since the beginning of the Tenderio, and we hope that this trust will be even enhanced during the next months and years. And if you just heard about Tenderio services for the first time now, please do contact us, and we'll be happy to schedule a call with you or have a chat with you in order to see how we could help you to grow your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's great. You seem to have frozen. Let me just go on there. So that's the end of our e-conference for now. Just to tell you what will happen now, everyone who's registered will receive a link to the whole thing. You can watch it all again, enjoy it again, and it will also be on the website, so you can do that. We'll also, as we said, send out a pack of all the answers to all the questions we've had. So they'll be all answered, and it'll be fine for you to read those and get the answers. So I just want to hand over now to Robert, finally one more time, to say goodbye to everyone. But from my side, it's goodbye, and thank you very much for joining.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, William, for moderating this e-conference. Thank you to all project partners for great 18 months that we accomplished. As I mentioned, this is not the end. We will be there after the end of our project, and we look forward to hopefully fruitful cooperation with many SMEs and also many new tenders won. Thank you very much.